Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's Joshua time, and we are going to do chapters 22 and 23. And wow, we're coming to the end there, aren't we? I'd like to dedicate this shiur to Rav Bernstein, my mother Iris Elizabeth Roque, Jean McBurrows, and also my neighbor Miss Tina that passed away. Who would you like to dedicate this shiur to? May their memories be for a blessing. Ooh, I feel a sneeze coming on. Ooh. Okay. Let's get to chapter 22. What are we using? The Prophets Art Scroll. The Joshua Judges Edition. The Reuben Edition. Artscroll.com. Get it. Hey, by the way, ArtScroll's got a payment plan in Affirm, I believe. If you're short on cash today, to getting all these sets, you can actually purchase these and do a payment plan. So you actually can get. It's so cool that they did that because there's so many cool books that they have. So go for it. All right. I don't know about outside the U.S., but for the U.S. All right. So let's go to 22. So we start chapter 22 with a farewell to the tribes of the east. So at the outset of this mission, Joshua had reminded the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh of their pledge to fight with their brethren. No, Niall. Keep it moving. They had reminded them of their pledge to fight with their brethren to conquer the land of Israel. And they had promised to go even beyond their commitment. Now that the war of the division of the land was over, Joshua summoned these tribes and praised their unselfish allegiance to their brethren and their promise. He gave them permission to return to their families and urged them to remain faithful to God and the Torah. It was especially important to exhort them to hew the Torah because they would be relatively isolated from the other tribes. They hew the Torah. And it would be easy for them to consider themselves a separate segment of the nation and eventually drift from the Torah. You got a whole river between you. You know, should we be coming over, doing the whatever with them over there? I don't feel like getting the boat ready, and my oar ain't got no gas in it. You know how people are. My boat need a new tire. I'm tired. I just got off work. I don't know. I'm just thinking what people be saying nowadays. So Joshua's like, don't think you are separate from us. You're supposed to be with us. Just because you're in a different location, don't change nothing. Keep that Torah first and foremost. Okay, first verse. We're in Perek 22, Pasuk 1. Then Joshua summoned the Reubenite, the Gadite, and the half tribe of Manasseh, and he said to them, You have observed all that Moshe, the servant of Hashem, has commanded you, and you have obeyed my voice in all that I have commanded you. You have not forsaken your brethren these many days unto this day. You have kept your charge. You have kept the charge of the commandment of Hashem, your God. And now Hashem, your God, has granted rest to your brethren as he had told them. And now turn and go to your tents, to the land of your possession, which Moshe, the servant of Hashem, gave you across the Jordan. And I just want to say, shout out to something Rav Bernstein said. He showed us that rest means to dwell in your land. So with that verse there, when it says he's granted rest to your brethren, that's you could go back to your land. And that's really important for those of us that read the Christian scriptures in Hebrews, when it talks about the rest, it's about going back into the land. Okay. Excuse me. And let's see here. We got some notes. Please excuse my I know this microphone picking everything up. I don't know how to stop it. Listen, I can't help it. We gotta do what we gotta do. We got allergies, and you gonna hear some stuff that's nasty. Just turn your head. Okay. So verse 1, it says, then verse 1 when it says, so then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, and there's a note there. So once the battles and allocations were over, that's when he summoned everybody. Everything was done. And then verse 2, the note is, Joshua began by saying that the 2.5 tribes had obeyed Moshe's command that they cross the Jordan to fight with their brethren, and they had obeyed his orders in the actual fray. And verse 3, which we read, was where you have not forsaken your brethren these many days. Moshe had asked these tribes to remain in the land of Israel only for the duration of the battles. You can see that in Numbers chapter 32, verse 21, which meant that they would be free to rejoin their families after the 7 years of conquest. So they were away from their families for 7 years. Voluntarily, however, the tribes did much more than that, he's saying. They stayed for an additional 7 years, making it 14, until the land was allocated and settled, because they felt that it would be unfair for them to enjoy their own inheritance while most of their brethren were still awaiting their assigned plots in the land. And not only that, they did not take the initiative to return home until Joshua summoned them and gave them leave to go. There were 40,000 warriors from these tribes, much less than half of the men of military age. It may be assumed that the same 40,000 men did not stay away from their families and property for the full 14 years. Presumably, they rotated with the rest of their tribes on a regular basis. And, okay, so now Hashem, your God, has granted you rest. Go back to your land, and you can return to your tents, to the land of your possession, which Moses, the servant of Hashem, gave you across the Jordan. Only, verse 5, be very careful to fulfill the commandment of the Torah that Moshe, the servant of Hashem, commanded you, to love Hashem your God and walk in all his ways and observe his commandments, and to cling to him and serve him with all your heart and with all your soul. And then Joshua blessed them and sent them forth, and they went to their tents. And we have a note here for verse 5. To walk in God's ways is to imitate his constant acts of goodness and mercy. That comes from Sotah 14a. To cling to him means to submit to his will and always to act for his sake. That comes from this foreknow, that comment. Moshe had exhorted the people in almost identical terms. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12, and 11, verse 22. So given the fact that these tribes would be separated from the bulk of the nation and from the spiritual atmosphere of Eretz Yisrael proper, this charge can be seen as the formula to be followed by any Jew who is separated from the Holy Land and the positive influences of his brethren. So since the eastern tribes would be distant from the tabernacle, the Sanhedrin, and most of the great centers of Torah, it was of a crucial importance that they extend themselves in Torah study. So they got to be even better in Torah study. Observance of the commandments and the wholehearted devotion to God's ways. You got to be extra that. So, Pasuk 7. To the half-tribe Manasseh, Moshe had given territory in the Bashan, and to the half-tribe of it, Joshua had given territory among their brothers on the western side of the Jordan. When Joshua sent them away to their dwellings, he blessed them as well. And he said to them, saying, with much wealth, return to your tents, and with very much cattle, with silver, gold, copper, iron, and garments, very much. Divide the spoils of your enemies with your brothers. And we have a note here. So in these, verse 7 and 8, Pasuk 7 and 8, Joshua gave a special blessing to the eastern half of Manasseh, because they would be parted from the rest of their tribes. So you got half tribe Manasseh, but the other half is in the land of Israel proper, because they would be parted from the rest of their tribe, which meant that extended families would be split. And the Torah states that only the tribes of Gad and Reuben had huge flocks. You see that in Numbers 32, verse 1, but not the tribe of Manasseh. Therefore, Joshua blessed Manasseh with prosperity. He concluded his charge by telling all the Easterners that they should share their loot with their kinsmen who had remained behind to guard the women and children and the tribal property from the marauders. And that note comes from the Malbim. So all those who were guarding your stuff, Manasseh and Reuben, while you were fighting for the 14 years, make sure you bring them some stuff back too. They, Pasuk 9, they returned and went, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe Manasseh, from the children of Israel, from Shiloh, that is in the land of Canaan, to go to the land of Gilead, to the land of their possession, of which they took possession in accordance with the word of Hashem through the hand of Moshe. So, basically giving us the sages are showing us, see how Joshua is really only speaking to Manasseh here. It's because of this. They're separated, so they just get the gift of, they don't really have land like that, huge flocks, so they get this particular gift. which is a special blessing. With all this stuff that they're getting. Okay, so verse 10, they came to the regions of the Jordan that are in the land of Canaan. The children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar there near the Jordan, a large altar as a showpiece. And the children of Israel heard, saying, Behold, whoa! The children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they built an altar opposite the land of Canaan in the regions of the Jordan, across from the side of the children of Israel. What? When the children of Israel heard this, the entire assembly of the children of Israel congregated to Shiloh to advance upon them with an army. What? You're trying to do what? Okay, let's read the notes here before we get all our blood pressure get up. So to the tribes in Eretz Israel proper, the eastern tribes had the noblest intention, but they did something that was misinterpreted as carrying the seeds of a potentially disastrous rebellion. So from the children of Israel from Shiloh, verse 9, Joshua met with the Easterners at his home, but instead of going directly to their homes across the Jordan, the Eastern tribes went first to Shiloh to bid farewell to their brethren and to pray and bring offerings. This indicated that their motive for their subsequent deed was pure. That note comes from the Malbim. Verse 10, when it's talking about the Eastern tribes built a large altar, which because of its size was obviously not intended to be used for offerings. Furthermore, they built it on the west bank of the Jordan. It could not have been meant to be used by the tribes living on the east of the river. Nevertheless, this was an unprecedented construction and it was misinterpreted. As a showpiece, they built this altar as a showpiece. So this so-called altar was not meant for offerings, but to be seen. Exactly what this meant was explained later by the Eastern tribes. We'll see it in verse 21 and 29. But at this point, the Western tribes thought that it was truly an altar, and they reacted with fear and anger. And they roused up the troops. Okay. So what the tribes had feared. So to the tribes in Eretz Israel and the land of Israel proper, this showpiece altar represented such a significant danger that it was sufficient cause for war, civil war. As noted above, once the tabernacle was established at Shiloh, it became forbidden to use altars for offerings anywhere else. Though it was a sin, it was not a capital offense. So if so, why were the tribes ready for a civil war if this is not a capital offense to build this showpiece altar? It was a crucial period. The tribes were settling in their own provinces, and the tabernacle would be the spiritual unifier of the nation. If indeed the Eastern tribes were establishing their own separate altar, they would be undercutting the unity of the nation. And the new altar could be but the opening wedge in a split that, given the powerful pull of idolatry and the influence of the Canaanites and the surrounding cultures, it would drag Israel down to the abominations of the region. The nation was resolved to prevent this, even if they had to resort to force. Let's continue on. Pasuk 13. To the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, the children of Israel sent Phinehas or Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the Cohen, to the land of Gilead. 10 leaders were with him, one head of an ancestral family for each tribe of Israel. Each man was the head of his ancestral family of the thousands of Israel. They came to the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh to the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, Thus said the entire assembly of Hashem, what is this treachery that you have committed against the God of Israel? Okay, so to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they sent the big guns. They sent Pinchas. Pinchas is the one that struck the spear through the man that was bringing the Moabite princess into his tent. That Pinchas. The Pinchas who the sages say when Moshe forgot what, he didn't know what to do when this terrible thing was going on with the Moabite women and the Jewish men. Pinchas said, yeah, I know what to do. Took that spear. He said, me and my spear know what to do. And he stopped that plague that was happening with the Jewish men for going into those Moabite women. So that Pentecost, so they sent the big guns. Sometimes you hear him called the war priest, Pinchas. So they sent Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, and 10 leaders were with Pinchas, one for all the heads of the ancestral families. So he went with a real big coalition or delegation. So they came to the children of Reuben and Gad and the half tribe Manasseh to the land of Gilead, and they spoke with them, saying, "Look, this is what we're all saying here. The entire assembly of Hashem. What is this treachery that you've committed against the God of Israel to turn away from Hashem this day? By how are you turning away? You're by building for yourselves an altar for your rebellion this day against Hashem. Is the sin of shiur not enough for us, from which we have become cleansed unto this day? We have not become cleansed from unto this day." And remember, cleansed is tameh. They are still tameh. They're not tahor. If you rebel against Hashem this day, tomorrow he will be angry with the entire assembly of Israel. But if the land of your possession is contaminated, cross over to the land of Hashem's possession, where the sanctuary of Hashem is. Take your stuff amongst us, but don't rebel against Hashem, and don't rebel against us by building for yourselves an altar other than the altar of Hashem our God. Did not Echan, son of Zerah, commit treachery regarding the consecrated property, and wrath fell upon the entire assembly of Israel? That man was not the only one to perish for his sin. And the children, okay, let me stop there because we got a lot of notes here. So this delegation, though battle might be necessary, it was clearly only a last resort. First, the tribes sent an impressive delegation to the eastern tribes to warn them of the potential danger of the altar and demand an explanation. So Pinchas, the future Kohen HaGadol, he was a zealot who ended a catastrophic plague and was blessed by God with the covenant of peace. You get that in Numbers 25, verse 7 to 12. And as such, he represented both peace and the readiness to take drastic action. You see him coming. Oh my God, it's Pinchas! If unavoidable. He was accompanied by a representative of each of the tribes, including the western half of Manasseh, whose eastern brothers were part of the suspected rebellion. In their desire to prevent sin and bring peace, the delegation suggested that if the eastern tribes were upset that their territory had less sanctity than the land of Israel proper, then let them resettle in the west. And the western tribes would redivide their land into 12 provinces instead of the 9.5. This was a remarkable offer, especially in the view of the fact that some of the tribes felt that they didn't even have enough space. So nations have often gone to war for territory. Seldom, if ever, has a nation offered to give up land voluntarily. But they're holding so tight to Hashem, Baruch Hashem, that they're even saying this is like awesome. So awesome. Okay. So verse 16, there's a note here. They emphasize this word, that this day, repeating it twice as if to say God's constant miracles and salvations are still fresh in our minds. How can you rebel against him this day so soon? Malbim says that. For verse 17, here's a note about the sin of shiur, which is in Numbers 24, verses 1 through 9. So the sin of shiur came about when a large number of Moabite women seduced Jewish men and influenced them to perform the worship of the idol shiur. As a result, God sent a plague that killed 24,000 Jews. And the worship of shiur, which involved defecating in front of the idol, is particularly revolting. Taking a poo-doo in front of the idol is how you worship that particular god. Even assuming that the eastern tribes intended to bring offerings on their altar, how could the delegation compare it to the incident of shiur? Well, Be'er Moshe explains that when Jewish men involved themselves with shiur, they did it only to appease the Midianite women, but in their own minds they meant to show utter contempt for the idol. They thought they were actually performing a mitzvah. Well-meaning though they were, however, they were guilty of idol worship because they were actually performing an idolatrous act. Such well-intended acts can lead to horrible consequences. So too, if the eastern tribes were planning to bring offerings on a forbidden altar, as the Westerners suspected, it was surely because they sincerely wanted to serve God. But Shiloh was too far away. So nevertheless, from such sincere deviations from the law of the Torah, the most terrible consequences can ensue, such as at shiur. So the bizarre service of shiur is based on the body's ability to separate and absorb the nourishing content of food and expelling the waste, and was thus meant to symbolize the human responsibility to distinguish good from evil, spiritual from material. And in the wilderness, where Israel lived a spiritual existence, the difference between the two is plain. But as the people began the transition to a material life, it became harder to draw the proper distinctions, and the danger that people could err grievously in the process. Thus, the analogy of shiur, and that note comes from Likutei Sichot. There's a note on verse 18. So the Westerners contended that they could not look the other way and say that the sin of the Easterners was not their concern. Jews are collectively responsible for one another, so that if the Westerners shirked their obligation to protest, they too would be liable. They reinforced their contention in verse 20 by citing the case of Achan from chapter 7 in Joshua, the individual whose sin caused the defeat of Ai. Here's a note for 19. So if the land of your possession is contaminated, so the East Bank is contaminated in the sense it has less holiness than the land of Israel proper. That note comes from the Radak. And God does not rest his presence there, Rashi says. So let's continue on. We have a quick summary for verses 21 through 29. The Eastern tribes respond. So the 2.5 tribes are shocked at the accusation. They explain that they have violated neither the letter nor the spirit of the law, far from seeking to separate themselves from their brethren. They meant to cement the national bonds into the future. So let's go to Pasuk 21. The children of Reuben and the children of Gad and half tribe of Manasseh responded and spoke to the heads of the thousands of Israel. God of the powerful ones, Hashem. God of the powerful ones, Hashem. He knows, and Israel shall know. If it is a rebellion or treachery against Hashem, save us not this day. If we meant to build an altar for ourselves to turn away from the following Hashem, or to offer an elevation offering or a meal offering upon it, or to offer peace offerings upon it, let Hashem himself exact retribution. If we did not do this out of fear, saying to ourselves, in the future your children might say to our children, what have you to do with Hashem, the God of Israel? Hashem has established a border between us and you. O children of Reuben and children of Gad, the Jordan, you have no share in Hashem. So your children will cause our children to stop fearing Hashem. Therefore we said, let us do this for ourselves, to build the altar, not for elevation offering or sacrifice, but so that it will be a witness between us and you, that our generations after us to perform the service of Hashem before him, and with our elevation offerings and our offerings and with our peace offerings. Then your children will not say to our children in the future, you have no share in Hashem. So we said, when they say this to our generations tomorrow, we will say, see this structure right here? On this altar of Hashem that our fathers made, not for elevation offering, not for all these, there's no sacrifices that can go on here. But it's a testimony between us and you. It will be sacrilegious for us to rebel against Hashem and turn away this day from following Hashem. To build an altar for burnt offerings and meal offerings, sacrifice, other than the altar of Hashem, our God, which is before his sanctuary. Sacrilegious. Okay. Let's read the notes we have here now. Verse 22. God of all the powerful ones, Hashem, that is God who is the master of kings and angels. This is a note from 22. They invoked the name and the power of God and repeated it for emphasis to strengthen their passionate claim that rebellion had never entered their minds. To the contrary, as they would explain, they set up their showpiece altar to demonstrate their loyalty to him, as he knows and Israel shall know. Then the other part in verse 22, save us not. They address God to reinforce their sincerity of their declaration. That comes from Rashi. In the next 3 verses, they went on to say that God should cease his help if A, they intended to use their altar for actual offerings, which would be forbidden, and which would indeed represent a separation from the nation. B, if their true motivation was not fear that the rest of the nation would ostracize their children as outsiders. Okay, and verse 25, we have a note. It is a normal, if sad, human reaction that if people are treated unfairly as pariahs, their defense mechanism will cause them to lash out not just at the critics, but also at the values they claim to represent. Thus, if the Western tribes reject the Eastern tribes, the Easterners will respond by rejecting the Torah, as well as those who falsely claim to be its exemplars. Okay. All right, so let's read verse 30 through 34. How are we doing on time? Yeah, because we are going to do chapter 23 as well. 30 through 34. Summary here: God will replace suspicion. Good will replaces suspicion. So Pinchas and his colleagues accepted the explanation and praised it, so that the altar was indeed accepted as a symbol of unity among the people and allegiance to God. Now let's read Pasuk 30. When Pinchas the Kohen and the leaders of the assembly and the heads of the thousands of Israel that were with him heard the words of the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the children of Manasseh spoke, it was good in their eyes. And Pinchas, the son of Eleazar the Kohen, said to the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the children of Manasseh, today we know that Hashem is in our midst, since you did not commit this treachery against Hashem. Now, you have saved the children of Israel from the hand of Hashem. Then Pinchas, son of Eleazar the Kohen, and the leaders returned from the children of Reuben and the children of Gad and the children in the land of Gilead to the land of Canaan to the children of Israel, and they gave them a report. The matter was good in the eyes of the children of Israel, and the children of Israel blessed God and no longer spoke of advancing upon them, the Easterners, with an army to destroy the land in which the children of Reuben and the children of Gad dwelled. And the children of Reuben and the children of Gad named the altar Witness, for it is a witness between us that Hashem is God. We have some notes here, verse 31. Now you have saved. So by explaining and diffusing the confrontation, you have saved our children and our grandchildren from falsely maligning the Eastern tribes and nation, and declared that their success depended not on him, but on their loyalty to the Torah. If they remained true to God and his commandments, he would make them victorious. If not, the Canaanites would remain and inflict bitter consequences upon them. Okay, so we have a summary here. Joshua offers a choice. So Joshua knew that he was nearing the end of his life, and he sought to prepare the nation for its future without him. So in this chapter, Joshua concentrates on the painful dilemma of the unconquered portions of the land and the Canaanites who were still dwelling amongst the Jews. And he knew that these idolaters were a threat to the existence of the Israelites, and that without his leadership, Israel might feel it was unworthy of the divine assistance it needed to be victorious, as it had been under Joshua. So he summoned the entire nation and declared that their success depended not on him, but on their loyalty to the Torah. And if they remained true to God and his commandments, he would make them victorious. If not, the Canaanites would remain and inflict bitter consequences amongst them. So it happened many days after, we're in Pasuk 1 of Parak 23, Hashem had given rest to Israel from their surrounding enemies, and Joshua was old, well on in years. Joshua summoned all of Israel, their elders, their heads, their judges, and their marshals, and he said to them, I have aged. I'm well on in years, and you've seen all that Hashem your God has done to all these nations before you, that Hashem your God has fought for you. Look, I have allotted you the territories of these remaining nations as a heritage for your tribes from the Jordan, including all the nations that I have destroyed up to the great sea toward the setting of the sun. Hashem, your God, will push them out from your presence and drive them out before you, and you'll inherit their land as Hashem your God, their land as Hashem your God has spoken to you. But strengthen yourselves very much to observe and to do all that is written in the book of the Torah of Moshe, not to deviate from it to the right or to the left, not to come into these nations, those who still remain with you. You shall not mention the name of their gods, and you shall not cause others to swear by them. You shall not serve them. You shall not bow down to them. Only cling to Hashem, your God, as you have done up to this day. Hashem has driven out great and powerful nations from before you. Not a man has stood against you to this day. One of you chased 1,000 because Hashem, your God, it is he who fought for you as he spoke to you. All right. So we got some notes here. So let's get into these notes as we pause in the middle of this really good speech. So Joshua said, I'm well on in years. Not only was he old, he was weak from the strains of the battle. That comes from Barbanel. God promises that he would be with him as he had been with Moshe, implied that Joshua, like Moshe, would live to 120 and be healthy and vigorous until the end. Joshua was now 110, but his life was shortened because he did not show enough zeal in conquering the entire land. Ooh, that gossip comes from Midbar Rabbah, or Numbers Midrash Rabbah 22:6. Verse 3, there's a note here. Joshua encouraged the people that they should not be fearful about his impending death because God, not Joshua, was responsible for their victories. That note comes from the Kli Yakar. Verses 4 through 5, looking into the future, Joshua said that he had already allocated all the land's territory and it remained only for the Jews to fight for it. And they could rely on God's help. Verse 6, Joshua echoed the exhortation that God had given him in chapter 1, verse 7. In verse 7, not to come into the nations and don't become assimilated into Canaanite culture. That's from Metudot, or to intermarry with them. That note comes from the Malbim. Notes in verse 8, only cling to Hashem. To cling to God is to recall his name and his love always, and never to separate one's mind from him. When a person succeeds in achieving this, his dealings with other people are only superficial, while internally he's always before God. Such people are attached to him and become chariots of his presence. Ooh, if you're familiar with the Ma'aseh Merkabah, that should sound really, really familiar. Even while they are alive in this world, the Rambam is writing that from Deuteronomy 11, verse 22. You are a chariot of his presence, even while you're alive in this world. Be'er Moshe notes that Joshua was speaking to the entire nation, not merely to its great men, when he urged them to cling to Hashem. This shows that everyone must attempt to achieve this very high level of spiritual attachment to God and is capable of succeeding. Now, also in verse 8, the part where it says, as you have done up to this day. So during the 40 years in the wilderness, when God's presence was palpable and he provided for all the people's needs constantly and miraculously, their thoughts were surely with him always. Therefore, Joshua urged them to reflect on that period. Even now, when they were in the land and no longer in such a miraculous environment, such memories would enable them to cling to Hashem. Let's keep going. Pasuk 11, you shall beware greatly for your souls to love Hashem your God, for if you should turn away and cling to the rest of these nations, these which remain with you, by intermarrying with them and coming into them and they into you, you should know with certainty that Hashem your God will not continue to drive these nations out from before you. They will be a snare and an obstacle to you, a lash in your sides and thorns in your eyes until you are banished from this goodly land that Hashem your God has given to you. And behold, this day I am going the way of all the world. You know with all your heart and with all your soul that not one of the good things that Hashem your God has promised you has fallen short. Not one of all the good things. All have come about for you. Not one word of it has fallen short. But it shall be that just as every good thing that Hashem your God has told you has come to you, so will Hashem bring upon you every bad thing until he will have eliminated you from upon this goodly land that Hashem your God has given you. If you transgress the covenant of Hashem your God that he commanded you, and you go and serve gods of others and bow down to them, the wrath of Hashem will burn against you, and you will perish swiftly from the goodly land that he has given you. That is the opposite of rest. So let's see what we got here. All right, so we got some notes here. When people have, these notes are from verse 14 through 16. So when people have a revered and trusted leader to guide them, they have less need to reflect on how events proved that it was God who facilitated their success. Their leader guides them to do good, and they tend to follow this without any analysis. So Joshua is counseling the people that he was soon to die and they would be left to their own devices. So he's urging them, therefore, to think for themselves and realize that only a protective, loving, all-powerful God could have brought them from Egypt and given them so much throughout the years from the Exodus to that moment. And surely he would continue to his goodness to them if they would continue to serve him. But if they would become Jewish Canaanites, they would lose everything. And so the point was here, I'll read that point again. When people have a revered and trusted leader to guide them, they have less need to reflect on how events prove that it was God who facilitated their successes. because their leader guides them to do good, and they tend to follow the leader without thinking about it. I'll just do what he's doing. I'm not thinking, he says it's God, let's go. Look at all the benefits we're getting and keep it moving. So, if you're following along with us in Pirkei Avot, it's kind of going together, like all the things that Joshua is instructing the children of Israel to do before he goes. And then you look now, we're reading Pirkei Avot, and we're doing the history after the Babylonian exile, and they come back, and how people are straying, and from the Torah, and all the issues that go with that. So you can see that what Joshua was saying, it would come to pass. But it would also come to pass that the people return to Torah so much stronger, thanks to the men of the Anshe Knesset Haggadol, the men of the Great Assembly that we read about, those Haggai, Nehemiah, Ezra, all those prophets and members of the Sanhedrin that bring Israel back to Torah. So I hope you enjoyed that. Write down below something that caught your attention from chapters 22 or 23 of Joshua that really stood out to you that you're learning. Remember, if you don't do anything, I'm just studying by myself. If you want to study, contribute, because it's an online Habruta, online family. And I want to know what you caught and some insights that you have too. So put them down below. Shout out to all the new family members, new subscribers. Let's keep this thing growing. And let's do Torah. Let's read Torah, understand it, and not lean on our understanding, but see how the sages look at it. So I will see you next time for Joshua chapter 24. Take care.